Hello and welcome to Talent Innovator. This is Dustin Miller, PolyInnovator, and this is the Now Page update for October 2022. This is number 27. Honestly, it seems really weird to me that I've been doing this for 27 months in a row. But when I came across the Now Page concept ages ago, obviously, I ended up thinking like, okay, this is a really cool idea, and then I'm gonna redo the page every month, just like everyone else does who does this concept. And then I realized, I like it better more as a series, like more as something I could go back to and look again. Like, okay, what did I work on this past year? Or what did I work on last year? Where was I the year before? And how have I progressed since then? And while I haven't necessarily gone back and looked at some of the old stuff just yet, I feel like at some point here soon I'm going to. Like once I hit the 30-month mark, it's almost 3 years, not 3 years. It's almost 3 years. And I'm like, maybe I should look back on like the first one or maybe the time there.
Dustin Miller, PolyInnovator.
And the reason why I think it's actually kind of important to look back is that we have our lives. We only have one life and we don't live that long. And in this post too, I talk about why I want to be immortal, because it's like that'd be the ideal scenario where you have all the time you need to do stuff. And one thing that scares the ever living crap out of me is the idea of opportunity cost, sunk cost, and then just losing the opportunity to do something due to time, and all three of those kind of coming together. Now, while I don't necessarily believe in sunk cost, because a lot of the things you do, right, even if you don't necessarily complete something, you get like 75% of the way towards completion, whatever that endeavor is, whether it's like 70% of a degree or 70% through a game or something like that. The experience you had taught you something, and you are different now because of that experience, regardless of whether or not you actually got anything officially out of that. So completed a game, you got a degree, you got a job, whatever the ideal goal would have been. Even if you didn't finish that, you still went down that path in that knowledge area, whether it's video game knowledge or real knowledge, or not to say it's not real knowledge, but you know what I mean. It's one of those things where that can affect the other areas of your life as well. And because of that, there's that cross-disciplinary mindset where this little bit of knowledge over here is going to somehow help you in one of the bigger knowledge areas over here. And because of that, I think that every endeavor is worthwhile, even if you don't finish it. Now, opportunity cost is something where, like, okay, let's say you have a time span of 4 years, and whatever endeavor you choose is going to take 3 years, and then you only have 1 year left over for the other endeavor, which means you're not going to be able to complete the other endeavor to the point that you would have done it had you chose that one first. And to me, that's one thing that kind of is scary, where like if you choose one over the other, then you get to the point where you may have not, you had an opportunity cost. Like you have to live with your decisions, and whether or not you spend the next 3 years afterwards still doing that second endeavor, it wouldn't be the same. Like maybe you didn't have the right kind of energy the second time around. Maybe the people that you needed to connect with weren't around anymore, or away from you, or something like that. And like just the resources weren't there. And so regardless, if you choose that first thing, you better choose right, because sometimes that might be the best thing. Or maybe it's the opposite. This is getting into some existential stuff, like there's different destiny pathways and stuff like that. But that's kind of what I think about. That's what this post is kind of about today. I get a little bit more existential, and that's where I'm at with a lot of my projections too, where I'm like, okay, where am I going to be in a year? Or how long is it going to take me to do this one thing? And back to the whole 3-in-1 thing, in my head, I'm thinking, oh, it's going to take me 1 year. In actuality, it takes me like 2 or 3 years. And that's where I'm at, where I'm like, okay, I'm dealing with the repercussions of that now, where the issues that I've had to face on whatever endeavor I'm pushing for, I've had to push back and like, okay, I got to force through this sometimes, force through that plateau, creatively, emotionally, motivation-wise. And it's really interesting because a lot of the time, it's up to you. It's really just down to what you can do and how can you go about doing this properly. And so that's where I'm at right now when it comes to a lot of these, like the Omni content, or now known as the Poly-In content series. It's one of those things where I thought I was going to be way farther along by this point. And so some of the posts, I made one actually like this past week, higher education for autodidacts, and that was a really interesting post. There's actually one coming out right after called higher education for polymaths. Very similar, but two different as a spectrum, so to speak. And I wanted to exemplify what higher learning could be like for those kind of individuals. And that was something that was on my Omni content list, the Poly-In content list, for ages. Most of the content pieces I've been putting out have been on my to-do list for literal years. And it's not because I've been lazy and putting them off per se. It's more of like, it wasn't time yet. I was working on other endeavors such as the interviews. And because of that, I ended up getting behind on some of the other endeavors. So again, opportunity cost. I made a choice. I would probably be farther along as a creator right now had I got my Omni content out, because I would have gotten more practice creating content. The whole point of the Poly content series is being omni-channel and redistributing and repurposing your content to spread out to all the different channels. And so I would have got more practice at that. I would have had more experience to teach other people with that. And I would have had more content, although I have a lot already, but I would have had more content overall that people could find and be the entry point. And not to mention too, be SEO friendly. And so I think that had I chose that path, I probably would be farther along as a creator, but my network would be tremendously smaller. And on top of that, I made a lot of progress as a content creator the other way. I started doing interviews. I started going on interviews. And while I have a lot to talk about when it comes to like exercise and even content creation and stuff like that, I'm still not super far along on my journey. 5 years is great, but there's people who are 10 years, 15 years in the content journey. So I'm still in the early stages, if you will. And it's one of those things too where I actually kind of had to push things back. So really, in actuality, it's more like 2 or 3 years depending on what I've been doing. Because 2018, 2019, 2017 especially, those were years that I was not super active compared to how I've been the last few years. So I don't regret doing interviews whatsoever. In fact, I'm really glad I made that decision. I made the decision to focus on interviews during that time because I thought that was the best choice. My gut was screaming at me, hey, beautiful time, get as many people as you can, talk to as many people as you can, even if you're burning out from it. And I definitely did a couple times. And it was one of those things where it wasn't full-on burnout, but it was getting close. And the only reason why I didn't full-on burnout is because I stopped doing interviews for a little bit, for short times, and I stopped editing him for a little bit too, just so I didn't like go crazy. And so right now I'm trying to catch up. And I think I'm getting close to the end of that 3-year cycle for some of my endeavors. And so I'm going to start finally seeing the results of my work and start seeing some of the next steps, next progression, if you will. And I think that progression is going to motivate me to continue working harder. At this point, I'm reaching my ends. Yeah, I'm reaching my ends because I feel like I've been straining for so long for no results. And that's because I haven't got to that point yet. I'm almost there. And this is me projecting, this is me thinking about it, but it really does feel like it's right there. So right now, I've just been working on my series that I've been doing. These Now Page updates are one of the few things that's consistent. I tried to do it on the first. This might come out on the second just because I have to work tonight, and I don't know if I have time to edit this before I go to work. But I made it I made the blog post this morning, and I'm making this now in the afternoon and evening. And the other thing is the swimming posts, which are every week. Now I've been a little bit off on like maybe a day or so or by a few hours if I forgot or got busy, but I always made sure I got it out. And those are 2 series that I've been determined to get out regularly. And I think that's the best way to get started. So you have to be consistent. You have to make a lot of content. I made a lot of content, but I wasn't always consistent, which is why the poly content didn't work. But now that I'm getting more consistent, particularly with some of my more easier stuff to make, the harder stuff, which I say harder, but poly content's only slightly harder than what I'm doing with this. And so once I start getting those series going, then I'm definitely going to see a lot more progress. And there's also the Poly Content Digest, which is a content repurposing newsletter, because I know there's a lot of creators out there who want to learn those tools and how to do it and the methodologies. I know a lot of them, the methodologies, if not most, and I know pretty much every single tool that's out there. So I can be a great resource for a lot of people, and that's why I wanted to do it. And so between these 4 series, if you will, I can actually start building a consistency layer, which is what I've been wanting to do for years. A nice constant layer of content, a nice stream of content, great content too, mind you. And then I can finally get onto like my swimming book or my first course or my like modular degrees that I wanted to make for people. So I wanted to make some templates that people can use too, like an MBA one, for example. And I can start getting those bigger things out. And I think that will start to compound quite a bit. So that's what's going on. That's what's coming up, really. I kind of skipped ahead a little bit. All in all, I don't want to keep this too long, but there's just this rat in the wheel kind of thing going on. And hopefully at some point I'm going to go fast enough to where I can get off the wheel. Cheers.